What is up, guys? Welcome back to the second channel. Today we're going to be doing a video talking about a game that came out a couple years ago that I've been playing a little bit of recently and have kind of been trying to bring back into rotation. Today we're going to talk about Gran Turismo Sport, what I think of it, and kind of talk about it at the end. As long as I still have footage to go over, I may actually have to switch over to some GT4 footage because I don't actually have that much footage here to talk about like some kind of future things for GT7 that I would love to see. So, with all that said, I think let's get right into it and talk about GT Sport. When it comes down to it, I've been playing Gran Turismo since I was very young, about 3 or 4 years old. I remember getting up and playing Gran Turismo 3 with my dad, and then, going to Blockbuster when Gran Turismo 5 Prologue first came out and picking that up. And of course, we had a blizzard where I lived, and that's kind of like a distinct moment of GT5 for me, and so on and so forth. I've been playing Gran Turismo for a very long time, and I remember how excited I was to play Gran Turismo Sport for the first time, expecting it to be kind of an evolution of Gran Turismo 6, but with better graphics and better features and all this stuff, and I was kind of disappointed by that. Gran Turismo Sport is pretty much a cut-down version of what I would expect a Gran Turismo game to be. And isn't necessarily a bad thing, not entirely, but it leaves me longing for more stuff coming in the future. It's definitely got my hype up for 7 whenever that probably comes out, because I'm at the day I'm recording this, I found out the game got delayed. It was the day they announced the delay. So I'm a little bit disappointed, but I think let's talk about some features that I don't like. Alright, so we're going to talk about GT Sports features here, and quite frankly, I don't like how cut down the game actually is. Probably the most notable thing to me that bothers me is the lack of customization. GT Sport, pretty much the only way to add horsepower to your cars is by upgrading it using mileage points and using a slider, and it defeats a lot of the fun of what made GT5, GT6, the modern, I would say high definition era of Gran Turismo great. Sport is so cut down on features, and I get it. At the end of the day, this game was not meant to be a full-fledged Gran Turismo title. A lot of people say this is a mainline release. I consider it a spin-off. And I'll talk, like I've said, it's mainly because it's missing a lot of the staple features of what we've expected from Gran Turismo in the past. Customization and stuff like that. Sure, we do have some other features and stuff like that. Obviously, you guys can see with the car on screen that I've utilized. Probably one of the great features that was introduced in Sport, and one that I hope comes back later in the series and is a staple to stick around for longer. But quite frankly, the fact that the game is missing customization, which to me has always been a huge part of me playing GT, is a bit of a problem, and I'm a little bit disappointed by it. And hopefully, again, we all know it's coming back in 7. They've already had the reveal trailer. They've already had all this. It's just the game is so dumbed down from what it should be, and that's what bothers me. And at the end of the day, again, GT Sport was never really intended to do that, and that's fine. But I do wish that they had still added that in for people like me who play casually, especially how long of a wait it's been. Polyphony even said that they didn't intend to take so long on GT7, and I thought that way Sport would make most sense. I mean, it was like it's a spin-off game, it's going to hold us over, get us kind of used to the newer physics engine, and once 7 comes out, we'll be used to it, and, we'll get all of our beloved features back. But it's been, how long has it been now since Sport came out? I think Sport came out in like 2017, something like that, 2016, 2017, so it's been a very long wait. A lot longer than I'm sure Polyphony, and I'm sure the rest of the Gran Turismo community, including myself, expected. But hopefully, we'll see all the features from previous games come back. I mean, we've already confirmed the used car dealership and performance mods and stuff like that are back. But let's talk about some more features. When it comes down to it, the Gran Turismo Sport, while it may be cut down on features, does have a lot of really nice additions. And we're going to talk first about the UI before we get into a lot of the features that I love were added back into Gran Turismo. And there's lots of good stuff that was added in. But when it comes down to kind of the overall look and feel of Gran Turismo Sport, I actually enjoy it. It reminds me a lot of Gran Turismo 5. Brand Central, which is what's on screen for you guys right now, has a lot of I don't know, it feels a lot like a mixture of all the classic Gran Turismos we've come to know and love. This showroom screen looks just like something that you would see out of Gran Turismo 2 and Gran Turismo 4, while the kind of like selection screen of all the manufacturers and stuff like that also has a lot of memories of Gran Turismo 3 and Gran Turismo 4, and I think it's great that they have some of these older references here. Well, do I think it was intentional? Probably not. They probably meant to go with a more modern design. It just really has a large resemblance to these older titles, which I enjoy personally. I've always thought that having a lot of references to prior titles is a good thing for Gran Turismo to have. and a lot of the way the images are conducted, a way the showrooms are organized. I mean, this right here that you guys are seeing on screen now, the Volkswagen, looks just like something that you would expect out of Gran Turismo 4, but modernized. And I think that's a really good way for these menus to be formatted. And I hope that Gran Turismo 7 follows suit. I mean, we have seen some snippets of some of the menu screens from Gran Turismo 7, and obviously it's very Gran Turismo 4 based. But I want to see, you know, stuff like this come back. But I would love to have a more retro style feel to it at the same time, if that makes any sense. Having the way that the Sport has organized things, I really hope they just kind of differentiate it a little bit, because I would hate for it to be, you know, they made Gran Turismo 7, it's just a carbon copy of all the menus from Sport, like the way that the car dealerships organize and stuff like that. But I think, honestly, the way that the game looks and feels is great. The graphics are just immaculate. I love Forza, don't get me wrong. Forza has some of the better graphics right now on the market for racing games, but Sport has it beat by a pretty good bit. And the sounds are really good. It's something that Forza Horizon notably dropped the ball on, but Sport got it right. Motorsport 7 did okay, but I think Gran Turismo Sport is probably the better looking and presenting game than most racing sims, including Forza. But let's talk about some other features that I like that were introduced in Sport that I hope come back at 7. Probably my favorite feature to be added in on Gran Turismo Sport is the livery editor. I love coming back and recreating these old race cars from years past. As you guys can see here, this is my Toyota TS050 that I've recreated twice of older Toyota race cars. Currently, this is my Minolta replica, which I know isn't great. I'm not very well experienced, and the livery editor is a little bit tricky to learn. It can be a little finicky, and it's not as intuitive as other livery editors I've used in the past. Of course, one game that sticks out right away is Forza. Forza has had, you know, really good livery editors by far out of all the livery editors I've used. It's a battle between Forza Motorsport 7 and Need for Speed Heat out of all games. They both just seem to have the best UI for, you know, creating liveries. But one thing I will say about GT Sport that blows everyone out of the water is the ability to use an SVG image and import it as your own file to use on your cars. A lot of people do this for other logos and stuff that were not included in the game, such as the Minolta logos you guys are seeing on this car. We're all through the Discover page on the game's social media functions, which I'll get to here in a moment. And that's the only way I was able to recreate this car. If they didn't have that, if they were very Forza-ish, there was a very low chance I could recreate this car, and it probably would have been a lot more difficult. As far as everything goes, the livery editor, while not the most intuitive in the world, it does add a lot of really nice features and makes things really easy to function. It has a lot of real manufacturers to choose from for decals and stuff like that. A lot of fake manufacturers that you can pick from, as well as the SVG image importation, which is really great. And the livery editor, again, allows you to recreate lots of old race cars. As you guys have seen throughout the video, I've ran, you know, a replica of the Gran Turismo Pace car from a Gran Turismo 3, or Gran Turismo Concept, I believe, and Gran Turismo 4, as well as the Castrol Tom Supra being remade on the GR Supra, the new Mark V. Neither of those were mine, by the way. I did not create either of those. The ones that I'm showing here, this Minolta livery, I did make. This is something I spent a lot of time on with. But at the end of the day, the livery editor is probably my favorite feature to come into GT Sport. I know a lot of people are going to, you know, kind of scoff at that, but it is a really nice feature for people like me who love to recreate old cars, old race cars from the past with a modern twist, or even if they have the original car to go off of, like in the case of the Skyline, for example. Where you're able to get the original Gran Turismo Skyline's livery put on the car. And it's great because not only are you able to do that, but through the social media functions, which I'll get to in a moment, you can download other people's liveries, which is how I got the Castrol Tom Supra and the Gran Turismo Skyline and another car that I'd recorded for this video, but somehow lost the footage for because I forgot how annoying it can be to film on a PlayStation sometimes. I tend to lose footage sometimes. I apologize for that. But anyway, this whole livery editor is great, and I think that it's something that I hope really comes back in 7. This is one thing they haven't really confirmed yet, is if the livery editor is going to return in Gran Turismo 7, and I really hope it does, because it's probably one of my favorite features from Sport, and if not my favorite feature from Sport. I hope they make it more intuitive, and then they add more precise rotation adjustment, because that was one problem I ran into a lot, especially what you guys saw earlier when I put the Kony logos on the fender of the car, which I'm substituting. Those aren't the original logos for the Minolta. I just was trying to think of something quick for the video and thought that would be a good substitute. But As far as like making the livery editor better, I would hope that they would add more precision to it, add more like the actual angle, like what degrees the angle is and stuff like that, instead of just having to eyeball it, which is what you have to do a lot with these liveries. But it's by far my favorite feature to be added into the sport, and we'll talk about my other favorite here in a second. And this is a feature that is like every time Gran Turismo comes out, ever since Gran Turismo 4, they've come out with this feature, and it's gotten a little bit better, and a little bit better, and a little bit better, and then even better than that. And then I think Gran Turismo Sport perfected it the best way possible. And we'll get into that here in just a second, but I am so happy with how Sport wound up playing out with this feature. And at the end of the day, Sport really isn't a bad game. It's just got a lot of growing pains, and it doesn't have the charm of the original Gran Turismo games. But we'll talk at the end about my overall review of Gran Turismo Sport. Now it's time to talk about probably one of the most infamous features of GT Sport, and that's scapes. And I am an amateur photographer. For those who follow my actual Facebook, my actual Instagram, know that I'm a pretty amateur photographer. I tend to over-edit my pictures way too much. Even though I prefer this style, I actually like how I edit my photos, but a lot of people say over-edit them. I'm an amateur photographer, right? And this game allows you to kind of practice in a game format, and sure, it's probably not as high features as an actual camera, but I think at the end of the day, that it's a really great way to learn how photography works, learning how exposure works, learning how how to work filters and vignettes and exposure. I think I already said that, aperture, as well as other stuff that makes photos great. And as you can see here, we've got our little pace car set up here for this one. I actually generally enjoy scapes. It allows me to make these really good photos that even in previous games, I took a lot of photos in Gran Turismo 6. I wish I had more time. I would go and pull a lot of my old photos off of 6 because I still have them on the PS3, and show you guys all the pictures I took there and like kind of how much better sports pictures looks. In fact, I've been changing the freaking banner photo on this very channel a lot recently. The pictures I've taken in sport, that's why I like sport. That's one thing I really like sport for, is going and taking these really nice pictures that look hyper realistic, and that's something that Forza drops the ball on, especially in Horizon 4. They don't really have the greatest photo modes, and Gran Turismo kind of knocks it out of the park, mainly because of their updated graphics and their more intuitive camera controls. While I've said that the livery editor isn't very intuitive, they made up for it with how intuitive scapes is, because it's just so precise. You can do so many things to perfect your pictures, and it works out really well, even for me as an amateur, to make these really nice shots like what you're seeing right now. And I generally enjoy scapes. It's a feature that I really hope comes back in 7 and possibly even better than it is here, even though I think scapes is perfect as it is. That's one thing that I hope scapes. It's not hard for game developers to mess up with the features. I'm Game Freak. I love Pokemon. I just like Pokemon and Game Freak when I do my stuff up. But this is one of those things that I really hope they bring back for Gran Turismo 7 and leave it in this amazing state that it's in. Because scapes is perfect. I think that any attempts to fix something that's not broken is going to end badly. It's kind of just how games work. You try to fix something that's not broken, it turns into even more of a mess. But that's scapes as a whole, and as you guys can see here, if you guys want to see this photo as well as this livery, I intentionally use the same search tags as this livery to see it. You can't actually find this livery through the skyline for some reason if you go in there, so use these tags here that I'm putting up on screen for you guys on this little menu here, and you guys can get access to this picture as well as the livery itself for those who want to have this car as well. Just like I did, I had to hunt for this really bad, and I used those exact tags to find it. It's, as a whole, scapes is just perfect. I don't have any problems with scapes. I think it is just beautiful, and I really hope that it's a feature that stays with GT7. And it's great for amateurs, like I said, for those who don't know how to take pictures. It's one of those ways you can learn. And also, one of my favorite things is that they have these like track ones, and you can use this. They have Laguna Seca, Nürburgring, Sarth, and a couple other tracks. I believe Willow Springs is also in here. And of course, I chose the Nürburgring because the carousel, as much as I don't like racing on the Nürburgring, as people who've watched the Gran Turismo 4 Let's Play will see, I really hate driving on the Nürburgring. But I love just how it looks. It's a very, as I've said in the Let's Play, that's kind of, I've turned it into a meme, even though I don't think anyone else is memeing it. It's aesthetically pleasing. And the carousel turn has always been aesthetically pleasing to me. And I thought it'd be a great backdrop to use for this picture. And originally I was going to use my Minolta Hybrid, but I wound up switching over to I think it was the Castrol Tom's car. And like Scapes is just great. I think Scapes is great, and I think it's a feature that needs to stay. And all in all, I mean, it's just great. I think Scapes and the livery editor, a couple other aspects of sport make it good. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's still not my favorite, and I'll give kind of a conclusion at the end, of course. I'm pretty sure it's probably the majority of you guys are watching for. But it looks like I'm definitely going to have to use some Gran Turismo 4 footage, because there's one last feature I want to talk about. And I think that I probably won't be able to get enough footage to really talk more about it. But to kind of throw in what we're going to talk about here in a minute, which is the social media stuff, I'll talk a little bit about how the social media aspect of the game is actually kind of nice. They've kind of always had this social media kind of aspect to Gran Turismo. They introduced it, I believe, in Gran Turismo 6 with its community function, and I loved the community function. I ran this rather large club and was utilizing it quite frequently. I played Gran Turismo 6 like it was, my life depended on it. It's like I was going to die if I didn't play it every day. And so I spent a lot of time with it, and I think it was great to see that kind of feature came back for Gran Turismo Sport. And I think it was utilized well. I think out of all the community tabs we've had, that GT Sport does a fantastic job utilizing it. I think it does it better than GT6 did. I do wish the return of clubs was still here. That was something that I really enjoyed about Gran Turismo 6. And I'm kind of bummed out to see that's not back, because it made it really easy to host league races. For example, I ran a Formula Miata series, is what we called it. And I think I actually still have a replay lying around somewhere on my Gran Turismo 6 save file on my PS3 of one of the races before the online got shut down. And this was back when GT6 was in its prime. And it was fun, and I enjoyed doing it. I think the community tab needs to come back with that regard, having clubs, having a way to message all of your friends at once in this giant community tab and be like, hey, we're doing this race at this time, be ready to get on and play with us, so you don't have to run all these community pages and stuff like that. But that's the community tab as a whole. I think it's great. And let's talk about some closing stuff, and for that I'm going to have to post our Gran Turismo 4 footage. So let's get into our closing, and we'll talk about my final thoughts on Gran Turismo Sport. In closing, though, is Gran Turismo Sport really that bad? I don't think it's a bad game. But at the end of the day, I do think that it's not deserving of being called a mainline game. Being called a mainline game in Gran Turismo would require it to have all the main features that make Gran Turismo great. Having, customization and, these clubs that were introduced in Gran Turismo 6, and having all these features, license tests, which were replaced by driving school, and I don't think driving school is bad. I do prefer the license system over the driving school system. A lot of people are probably going to disagree with this, because driving school, a lot of the races in GT League didn't require anything from driving school on GT Sport, which is great. It just made the game too easy for me, though, I believe. I was able to blast through and get through a lot of races that probably would have taken me weeks to do on a normal game. In fact, you guys are seeing right now my Let's Play from Gran Turismo 4. This is episode 10 for reference. And this whole thing was it took me a while to get to this point where I'm doing the Gran Turismo World Championships. And GT Sport, it took me no time at all to get to the amateur league and through the professional. I've even unlocked the endurance stuff already. And it took no time at all. I mean, I've got I don't even know, probably not even 100 hours in the Gran Turismo Sport, and I was able to do that. And I think that, having that length of play really dumbed down GT Sport as a single-player experience. GT Sport is all about multiplayer, FIA certified racing, and a multiplayer mainly, right? It's not really meant to be a good single-player game, but for me, I play Gran Turismo more often than not as a single-player experience. I play it by myself, and I don't really play it with a lot of people. I used to be a part of this giant group. I used to run a Gran Turismo tuning site, and I used to have a lot of people to play with. In Gran Turismo Sport, I guess not having that group I once had and having to pay for online, which I think is outrageous nowadays. I guess that's just my PC privilege kicking in there. But at the end of the day, I don't play a lot of sport because I don't play a lot of multiplayer. And I think that that's kind of where sport kicks off, really, and it becomes better, is that it's a multiplayer experience. But as for a single player experience, this probably to me, this is going to sound bad. Don't take this in a negative way. But I find Gran Turismo Sport to be a slightly better Gran Turismo PSP. I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, but I think Gran Turismo, it's like Gran Turismo PSP, the same thing. I don't hate Gran Turismo PSP. I love that game. I put a lot of time into Gran Turismo PSP. But GT Sport just feels like a much better looking, much better physical appearance-wise, much better playing Gran Turismo PSP because it doesn't have all the same features that GT Sport does. And I have a lot of similarities with Gran Turismo PSP. I mean, it kind of functions the same way. You can't really soup up your cars like you could in Gran Turismo 5 and 6 and, prior mainline games. And it's probably one of the major reasons why I don't think Gran Turismo Sport's really deserving of being called a mainline game. It seems to be a debate whether Sport is a mainline or a spin-off. And I, for one, consider Sport a spin-off because it just doesn't have the features that make a core Gran Turismo game. It's the same thing with PSP. I don't consider PSP a mainline. I consider it a spin-off. Much like, we could go into Pokemon later, but I consider Pokemon Let's Go a spin-off, or lots of people consider that a main series game as well. But at the end of the day, Gran Turismo Sport is not a bad game. In fact, I want to put this out. It's a good game. And for those that, want to experience Gran Turismo in the modern era, I think for those that are new to the series, I would recommend personally playing 6 first. If you're wanting to play a modern era Gran Turismo, as well as, get all the core features and stuff like that. But I do think Sport is a good entry point because it gives a lot of people who have never played Gran Turismo before time to adapt to the physics engine, how the game plays. So when 7 comes out and we get all of our features back, we get customization back, we get all the original circuits. Because that's one thing I was paying attention to when I was creating this video. Sport doesn't have any of the original tracks from prior games. I mean, we get a good select, few new original tracks, but we don't get Trial Mountain, Midfield, Deep Forest, Grand Valley, Red Rock Valley, all these Apricot Hill, even Complex String. I could go on all day about all these original tracks that were fictional. Costa di Amalfi. I could do this all day of tracks that they didn't include but made these new tracks for, and they just don't ring well with me. It's not like these legendary tracks from prior games that they sit well and they get this reputation. I mean, Red Rock Valley is a perfect example of a track that is a bit of a cult classic now, but it was never utilized again. And it's like a lot of people are like, hey, bring that back. And Sport didn't feature any of the tracks that was famous. But anyway, that's my review of Gran Turismo Sport. A good game, but I don't consider it worthy of calling it a full-fledged Gran Turismo title. In fact, I believe it is just a slightly better, more aesthetically pleasing, better playing Gran Turismo PSP. At the end of the day, it's a good game, but I think that's just what it's lacking. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you guys next time. Like I said, I don't hate Gran Turismo Sport. So if you guys want to see actual gameplay of me playing Gran Turismo Sport, just let me know. I'll be happy to do it. Like I said, I don't hate Gran Turismo Sport at all, but I do have a lot of criticisms of it for missing out on a lot of features that we would have liked. But anyway, I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day, guys.